In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
In Plato's Republic, Socrates argues in behalf of the most radical form of communism ever proposed. Not only would he prohibit the private possessions of material goods among his guardians, he would eliminate all privacy and then communize even the family. In the Politics, Aristotle undertakes a lengthy critical examination of Socrates, his political proposals as a primary step towards presenting in his own account of the best regime, which he argues necessarily embraces separate families and private property. I aim in this essay to bring to light something of a political disagreement between Aristotle and Plato that this controversy indicates. One would hardly describe Aristotle's break with Plato as an under-researched or arcane topic of scholarly analysis, but the available commentaries fail to preserve, to say nothing of explaining, the particular phenomenon of the political disagreement. Most commentators allege that in the Politics, Aristotle misrepresents or simply misunderstands Socrates' argument, and then pertinently directs his objections at his own misconceptions. What we have, they suggest, is not a genuine disagreement, but rather a case of mistaken identity. Others construct merely eclectic reconciliations, which moreover tend to belittle Aristotle's own declaration of opposition. Those commentators who do address the disagreement between Aristotle and Plato as such elect a strictly metaphysical focus and disregard to the political dimension of the controversy. There is good reason to be skeptical of any reductionist account of the political controversy between Plato and Aristotle, but especially of the metaphysical reduction, for it was Socrates' renunciation of the study of physics and metaphysics to concentrate on the human affairs that first brought philosophy down from the heavens, and thus provided the occasion for Aristotle's political disagreement with Plato. Socrates chose this political focus, which distinguishes him from the previous philosophers, not because he had grown weary of cosmological inquiry, but precisely because he calculated that politics provided the best access to the cosmos, or the whole. Metaphysics. Socrates' return to the study of human things was based not upon a disregard of the divine or natural things, but upon a new approach to the understanding of all things, or the whole. If our access to understanding the whole indeed lies in human affairs or politics, and Aristotle's teaching regarding the cosmos or the whole opposes Plato's, we may well expect politics to be a primary rather than merely a derivative factor of their overall disagreement.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Towers, and we're recording here at the symposium. So pull on your togas and put on those fucking wreath things that you put on your head, that they put on their head. You know what I'm talking about. Those fucking wreath things that they put on their fucking heads. And then, listeners, you and I need to reason together in this philosophical discussion. I am John Towers, and this is the Abracast. So this evening we're going to be talking about, we're doing a Western philosophy episode. We haven't done one in a while. We're going to be talking about Aristotle's Anticommunism. Is an essay written by Darrell Dobbs, the University of Houston. So let's get started. Before we do, raise your glasses to the air and thank my Patreon and Subscribe Star people. Thank you guys. Without you, these bonus shows, the regular shows, the Fellow Craft episodes, all the other stuff that I put up there, I wouldn't be able to do it. So thank you guys. Thank each and every one of you. Western philosophy again? Come on, bros. They all can't be about wizards and blowjobs. Which reminds me about the new shirts. It can't just be about wizards and blowjobs t-shirts. You can find those on the webpage. I think that they're fun. Also, this is August, so we have a perk this month. Our August perk is the Wizard card. It's a tarot card wizard. It's a wizard tarot card. It goes with the tarot cards that I designed. You can also find those on the website too. It's like an additional card, bros. It's like a bonus card. It's like the fucking Pokemans. This is a new card for your fucking Pokemans. It all has to do with Aleister Crowley and the Thoth deck. But so in my official deck, you have a magician card, and it's this chick with great boobs. She's got some great boobs, and she has 4 arms, and she's levitating in the air with her sitting Indian style. Are you allowed to say that anymore? She's not sitting Indian style. She's sitting cross-legged. I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that anymore. Anyhow, in her 4 arms, she's holding the symbols of the 4 suits of the minor arcana in the order laid out by Pappus and the Tarot of the Bohemians and the Tetragrammaton mechanics of the card. So in the Wizard card, we have our Cyrus the dead guy sitting in a winged back chair, and around him are the symbols of the tarot cards, the symbols of the minor arcana of the tarot cards, but they're all in the wrong order. And, I don't want to be too much of a spoiler alert, but there's going to be 3 magician cards, right? So we have the magician in the deck. If you are a $5 or $10 Patreon supporter, you're going to get the wizard card. That's the August perk. And then sometime in the future, there'll be another magic user card. I don't really know a whole lot about it. Not the cool things about the card, well, there's a lot of cool things about the card, but the back of the card, where usually they just have like a weird, just like generic pattern or print on a tarot card, the back of my cards, there's actually laid out the mechanics of the minor and major arcana, the tetragrammaton system of the universe, encoded in the back of the cards. So they're cool. Even if you don't have a deck, it's just a cool. You use it as a bookmark. I mean, it's great. It's just a neat card. I can't wait to get it because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it into the deck that I've been using, and see what happens. Okay, blowjobs, wizards, tarot cards. I think I checked all the boxes. Let's go. If you want to get a look at the graphics, the back that I was just talking about, or what the actual wizard card looks like, you just hit up my Instagram. I posted pictures of them there. last week, I think. So as we're going to be going through this, I want to just bring to light that the Democratic National Convention is like next week, I believe. And also, we've been talking a lot about this anti-communism business, lately because of all the stuff that's happening. And one of the things that I had pointed out, and Trevor Loudon had pointed out when he was on the show, is that the BLM, the What We Believe section of the BLM website, has a lot of communist stuff in there. One of the things that they had, I haven't been on there in a while. I know that they were revising it. They were cleaning it up to make it not so fucking crazy. But one of the things that was on there, I'm not going to pull it up right now to fact check myself. It was on there. Go to the fucking time loop or whatever. It's time machine, whatever it's called, and find it. I'm sure you can find it. I'm sure you can. Anyhow, one of the things that they were calling for is the dissolution of the family unit. They were saying, the family unit's a bad idea. We got to get rid of the whole fucking thing. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because we're going to get into that. We're going to get into specifically that bullshit right here. This idea of dissolving the nuclear family. This one of the big fucking things that Aristotle's like, nope, wrong, and he goes into a lot of depth talking about it. And the essayist here does a great job of kind of explaining it all to us. We're going to see it's because the family should be the model for. Yeah, I'll just let them talk about it. They're going to do a way better job at trying to fucking explain it than I will. All right, I'm just jumping right into the middle of this thing. Aristotle's objections. Just as an adequate comprehension of Aristotle's critique requires an explanation of the peculiar focus on communism within the Republic as a whole, it is necessary, similarly, fucking stumbling all over that, similarly, to account for the role this critique plays in the plan of the work in which it is a part. Now, the principal thesis, quite literally, of Aristotle's Politics is that the role of the statesman is different in kind and not simply in quantity of subjects from the role of the household manager. Aristotle presents his teaching regarding the household management in Book 1, and this includes discourses on what we today narrowly term economics, as well as on the proper bearing of master and slave. We'll just say boss and employee, just for the sake of not getting muddled down in the fucking affairs of ancient Greece, okay? Father to child and husband to wife. Latter discussions turn naturally to consideration of the specific excellence appropriate to each of these relations. But since the household is only a part of a more comprehensive partnership, the polis, the specific excellence of its component relations, can properly understood only with a view of part of the household plays in the whole political community. For this purpose, it is necessary, Aristotle says, to make a fresh start. We must consider political regimes because the regime governs the ordering of the political whole of its part. Aristotle intended to present his own understanding of the best such political regime, but first he must show the necessity of his search for something beyond those regimes, whether already in existence or merely put forward in speech, which are thought to be well ordered. This he does by devoting Book 2 to the criticism of a number of theoretical and actual regimes, beginning with that described in Plato's Republic, now Socrates' city. So the way that I understand this is Plato wrote it, but he wrote the narrative as if Socrates was having the dialogue or telling the story. So Plato's Republic. Now Socrates' city warrants this immediate attention because his regime turns the order between the polis and its constituents, parts topsy-turvy. Although it, like the other regimes Aristotle considers in Book 2, appears to be finely contrived, Socrates' regime must, more even than these others, poses as an obstacle hindering the establishment of Aristotle's principal thesis. For Socrates' regime, according to Aristotle, utterly confuses whole and part. Socrates, Aristotle contends, makes a household out of the polis. According to Aristotle, it is above all Socrates' reliance upon communism, ostensibly prescribed to promote political unity, that reduces the polis to the status of a household and destroys the political community as such. Now, it is not immediately evident in what sense the polis would be destroyed by being unified in the manner of a household, for surely certain advantages would accrue to a political community that would rely on the bonds of kinship to reconcile the conflicts of interests that regularly threaten to break it into rival factions. For this reason, Socrates proposed that all citizens in his city regard one another as brothers, and took the necessary steps to support the credibility of the supposed kinship by communizing family life and property. Aristotle recalls, however, that the polis initially evolves out of a community of many households. The household outside the polis is incomplete, even as a household, one as a part of a political community, Aristotle claims, is the household perfected and its capacity to achieve its proper end energized. If one tries to make a household out of a city, reversing the development, the political community will be incapacitated with respect to its proper end. Such an incapacitated association is, according to Aristotle, no longer truly a political community. For it is evident that the cultivation of virtue must belong to the polis. That is truly and not merely for the sake of a word, so called. Thus, Aristotle finally objects to Socratic communism. Not because it is impracticable or economically inefficient, but rather because it destroys the city as a fit habitat for human excellence. Aristotle's several objections to the regime described in Plato's Republic can be seen then to culminate in a single comprehensive contention. Socratic communism disputes the intelligences of man and polis, disabling even the best human nature from its proper fulfillment. Aristotle criticizes Socrates' politeia because he finds it feeble and impotent, while the regime for which he is searching is the mightiest of all. As we've seen, Aristotle suggests that Socrates' chief makes his confusion of political unity and familial kinships of whole and part, and that this is responsible for all of his subsequent political errors. We infer, accordingly, that it is not the destruction of the family as much as it is an elevation into a paradigm for political unity to which Aristotle objects. Although Socrates hopes to make his citizens care for one another as brothers, Aristotle maintains that Socrates' elevation of the household into the dominating principle of political life erodes the true bond of political unity, namely friendly love. Simultaneously undermines the proper education of the philosophical nature It is to the effects of communism on friendly love that we shall turn first to discover the foundation of Aristotle's criticism of the Republic. Communism and friendship. Communism, then, as now, seems to promise a wonderful friendship among everyone. But Aristotle argues the appeal of communism is specious. In fact, communism undermines friendship. Aristotle's analysis of the Republic reveals three ways in which the philia, or friendly love, suffers from the measures Socrates proposes. First, Socrates' attempts to expand the domain of such terms of familial endearment as son, brother, and father results in less rather than more concord in like-mindedness, which, it seems to Aristotle, is a specifically political form of philia. Second, Socrates' expansion of the household to comprise the entire polis means that the realms of familiar and erotic love will no longer be separate. Philia can scarcely flourish in the mingling that results. Third, this is like here, right? This familiar and erotic love. This is the Brave New World, right? This is everyone belongs to everyone else. And then this thing about the son and the brother and the father results less rather than more concord or like-mindedness. This is interesting. I've said on the show before, if you're ever in a room and everyone is thinking the same thing, get the fuck out of the room. Let's see. Third, Socrates' communization of property obstructs the development of generosity or liberality, the special work of which is to liberate philia from its bondage to one of self and possessions. Imagine... I hate the fucking song. I don't even remember what the line is. There's no possessions. I don't know, whatever. Let us consider these each in turn. The polis is literally held together by concord, or like-mindedness, which it seems to Aristotle is political friendship. Accordingly, it is to view that Aristotle first criticizes Socrates' political institutions. Nevertheless, even if this is the best for the community to be one as much as possible, it is not manifestly indicated in accordance with the saying, if all at the same time say mine and not mine, because all is twofold, on account of which all saying the same thing is one way fine, but not possible in another. Why not fit it all for like-mindedness? Like-mindedness, we learn, arises for fellow citizens when concerning what is advantageous. They share like a judgment. This is called, they're talking about a culture. We all we kind of recognize the value of the same things. When concerning what is advantageous, they share a like judgment. They choose the same things and act on other common resolutions. Aristotle maintains that all saying the same thing is not at all indicative of like-mindedness, of a truly common resolve and disposition to act. For although all say the same thing, they may all speak from a personal conviction. Here we go. Personal conviction. I'm sorry, I just got to take a note while I'm doing this. With this consideration in mind, Aristotle himself splits into the property of each of the citizens for his best polis. One part he would locate safely in the central districts of the city. The other part, a more remotely and precariously near the frontier. In this way, each citizen has a personal stake in both places. Personal stake. This is great. In both places. Remember, Obama used to say, like, offhandedly, "Hey, look, we all got to have skin in the game," while he was letting hundreds of people, like millions of people, off the hook for 100 different fucking things. This leads, Aristotle says, to more like-mindedness for citizens than can stand together behind a foreign policy which is based in their common personal interest, rather than splintering into factions favoring each jingoism or appeasement. Hence, it would indeed be a fine thing if each spoke for himself, saying mine, but Socrates' regime, all, when they say mine, speak only collectively on behalf of the polis. Aristotle contends that for them to speak for themselves is impossible. Why? His reasoning turns to the nebulous connections among citizens established by familial communism. He says 1,000 youths become sons in each of the citizens, but they are not his personally. Rather, to the chance man, likewise, the chance youth is son. Thus, each says mine in whatever relation to number he happens to be, namely mine or someone else's, and doubting this too, for it is unclear for whom a child happens to be born and for whom saved once born. Thus, the clarity of the personal interest and conviction is doubly obscured by Socrates' communization of family life. Each says not mine, but mine or someone else's. And he doubts even this already diluted connection. This circumstance precludes like-mindedness because each is not himself permitted to have a clear mind to be like-minded with. Hence, they're all saying mine is hollow. Such speech, Aristotle says, is a paralogism, an abuse of the logos, meaning truth. It's abuse of the truth. A paralogism. That's nice. Merely saying the same thing, then, is not sufficient for like-mindedness, but neither is it necessary for if all citizens say the same thing. For example, hey, I'll rule. The result is civil war rather than like-mindedness. Like-mindedness exists, for example, when the whole political community intends that a particular person should rule, provided he is willing. But then the ruled say, hey, you rule, while the prospective ruler says, hey, I'll rule. We see like-mindedness in this instant precisely because fellow citizens are not all saying the same thing. They say different but concordant things. Aristotle infers then that by stretching the application of such terms as son, father, and brother beyond their natural domain, Socrates does not at all contribute to like-mindedness or political philia among the citizens. That is why we are all called comrade, which you'll find that word appears numerous times in the Black Lives Matter What We Believe section on their website. In fact, in Aristotle's estimate, the present mode of speaking is more indicative of like-mindedness than that which Socrates proposes. Aristotle emphasizes that philia stems especially from a sense of ownership, but in Socrates' city, the disjunction mine or someone else's dulls and dilutes this sense. The present mode of saying mine, therefore, is mightier and better. For presently many speak with personal conviction of the same youth as their own. Some call the same lad son, others call him brother, and still others nephew or cousins. All of them employ different terms, however, as expressions of their personal relationship to the lad. Each speaks for himself, and then calling the lad his own. Their personal attachments provide a bias for a truly common resolve to tend to his welfare. Aristotle concludes then that it is better to be a private nephew than even a son in the manner prescribed by Socrates. For Socrates so dilutes the special care that accompanies philia that its specific care inspiring quantity is rendered ineffectual. In any event, Aristotle observes some of Socrates' citizens will inevitably detect their own kin, despite his elaborate precautions. Children tend to resemble their natural parents. Aristotle indicates, moreover, that this existence, such resemblance as betray natural kinship, is just his. I wonder what Socrates did, where he was all like, "Hey, man, it takes a village," right? We've heard this one before. His objection to Socratic communism perpetrates deeper than the practical observation of family resemblance initially suggests. Once again, it is not fundamentally considerations of impracticability, but rather concern for communism's consequence on the promotion of human excellence that moves Aristotle to opposition. Particularly interesting is Aristotle's juxtaposition of the doubting to which Socrates prescribes designations give rise and the trustworthy evidence seized upon by the citizens in accordance with the natural family resemblances. For every greater confidence Socrates' citizens place in the natural similarities, Aristotle thus suggests the authority of conventional designations in a political community which posits them is further diminished in a good polis by constraint law or convention, supplements and fortifies a father's rule. In turn, the father's endorsements of law adds to the force of the filial love and respect to its authority. Accordingly, the mightiest and best program for supervising the care and education of the young must combine community and private participation. Socrates' elimination of private family connections, that's son of a bitch, that is what however, precludes the possibility of this combination.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Against Socrates' hopes of instilling friendly love in his citizens by extending familial kinships, Aristotle maintains that it will be all the more difficult for such a community to guard against assaults, incests, and other outrages as a result of Socrates' reforms. Presumably, this follows because fear and shame, the safeguards for which Socrates depends to discourage these outrages, will be weakened by the dilution of the familiar philia on which they are based. Significantly, however, Aristotle chooses not to dwell on the increased difficulty of preventing these crimes. Instead, he stresses their impiety and their impropriety. Aristotle objects in particular to Socrates' handling of eros. Socrates allows eros, I think he means fucking, between citizens in part because of its irresistibility, but also as a lever for unification. This becomes apparent when he accedes to Glaucon's addition to the law governing their behavior of guards on military campaigns. No one, father, mother, brother, or sister, may then refuse the overtures of a lover. We all belong to everyone else, right? The brave new world. Socrates' presumption, or presumably hopes that his warriors will be stirred by the presence of the beloved to perform deeds of heroic valor. Certainly the city benefits from the intensified exertion of its warriors, but Aristotle insists that such an incestuous arrangement allowing eros between kin involves the greatest impropriety. Once again, the fault can be traced to the Socratic scheme for political unification, having eradicated the private family. Socrates has no choice but to introduce incest into a city. As a consequence, eros, fucking, may pervade the whole city. There is no longer exists a shielded environment in which philia can arise and develop, uncontaminated by the influence of fucking. Or maybe just lust. I'm not sure. Socrates may have intended the opposite, but the city does not become chaste. The household merely loses its innocence. Fucking, we infer, has no business in the household, which is the cradle of philia. On the basis, Aristotle criticizes eros among kin as out of place. And philia requires a sheltered environment to be nurtured to maturity. This makes a lot of sense to me. But Socrates destroys this environment, according to Aristotle, by communizing the family. As a result, Socrates causes a diminution rather than an increase of philia. For the reason incest, eros between kin, is superlatively improper. The most fitting thing among kin, not to mention fellow citizens, is family. Upon this point, Aristotle has discussed only the shortcomings of Socrates' proposed communization of the family. To examine his proposal for communal property involves a separate inquiry. Aristotle says because of the current separation of families were maintained, one could still ask whether property should be common. So I'm just going to take a second here to just mention, I did an American sermon episode. I'm sure you can find it on the featured topic link. I'm not exactly sure where. It's called The American Sermon. It has something to do with American communism. It's William Bradford's journal, or the book he wrote about the Plymouth Plantation. And, if you Google search Pilgrims, communism, or Pilgrim socialism, or the Mayflower Pact, or communism, any of this stuff, you're going to find a million articles talking about how it's bullshit. Snopes, fact check negative, and all this stuff. But if you go and just read the book, it is clearly what happened. And I think that we're going to sit here, I think that we're going to get into kind of the same sort of phenomenon here, which during that American Sermon episode, I kept saying, like, predictably this is not going to work. Predictably this is not going to work, when he's talking about how they divided up the property at the beginning versus how they divided up the property when Bradford took over after the original dude died. So if you're interested in all of this kind of stuff, find that American Sermon episode and check it out. And then Google search it and tell me how fucking right I am. Like, You can find hundreds of articles saying, this is alt-right propaganda, nonsense, conspiracy theory. But listen to I read the book in the episode. I read it to you. I'm pretty sure you can find it online if you want. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what Socrates is going to do with property here. Aristotle says, because even if the current separation of families was maintained or were maintained, one could still ask whether property should be common. Socrates, we recall, recommends the legislative declaration abolishing all private properties for his guards. Aristotle maintains the legislators should attend to the characters of their citizenry rather than to their property. Property will be used in common ways, he says, if men become friends. Men do not become friends as a result of their communization of their property. Thus, the integrity of Aristotle's apparent independent inquiries emerges in this recurrent concern for the effect of Socratic communism on friendly love, philia. In accordance with this concern, Aristotle first indicates that liberality, a virtue that implicates private property, is itself a prerequisite for sharing in friendly love, and thus for participating in the political community. Then he urges or argues that Socrates' politicization of property and other household matters results instead in the development of habits which undermine liberality. Aristotle begins his examination by making a distinction that proves to be important for determining how property might be made common. In accordance with the distinction between holding or possession and use, there are three possible schemes according to which one may make property common. To use common while possession is private. Possession could be common and use or private, or both possessions and use could be made common. Aristotle indicates Aristotle indicates his dissatisfaction with both common possession and common use. Common possession or holding leads to neglect, and common use leads to abuse or overconsumption. Nevertheless, he does mention a fourth possibility, that possession and use remain private. Aristotle, in other words, stops short of recommending that property be kept private. Property must somehow be made common, through it by law or through though by law it is thoroughly private. Why? If property were kept private, there would be no sharing. The corresponding character is called by Aristotle illiberal, or even money-loving. Aristotle says that individuals like the self-lover and the money-lover are justly condemned, but hasten to add their perverted loves should not be confused with the familial love we all quite naturally have for ourselves. Taking Aristotle quite literally, the decisive difference between the self-lover and one who feels a friendly love for himself appears to be inseparability of the self-lover's family love from his self. To be a self-lover or a money lover means essentially to have one's familial love stuck on oneself or possessions. All right, that's starting to get away from me. We'll just jump ahead here. Communism and philosophy. Aristotle's concluding objections were directed towards the impact of Socrates' political proposals on education. Here we are, we're in the shadow of remember the teachers union in California or whatever. They're saying like all the private schools have to be closed. All the charter schools have to be closed. Everyone has to come to our shithole municipal schools, period. All right, listen. Socrates communizes property and abolishes private family to promote political unity, to ensure that his guards remain the friendly allies to their fellow citizens. But he implies that no such precautions would be necessary if the guards were truly educated in a fine way, presumably because they have not yet received this education. Socrates supplements their early training in music and in gymnastics and as communistic institutions. As Aristotle notes, however, the evil Socrates wishes to remove from his city arises as a consequence of viciousness, not as a result of the lack of communism. Thus, he picks up Socrates' suggestion that communism is an institutional prop for his regime, which serves that in the absence of the intrinsic support that only a proper education can provide. The difficulty with this strategy, according to Aristotle, consists in the immediate effect of the communization. Communism cannot serve as an effective stopgap because its own consequences preclude the effectiveness of Socrates' higher philosophical education. Because of this preclusion, further education, Socrates' guards will fall out amongst themselves. He says the manner in which Socrates' establishment, even the rulers and precarious, in that has the same ruling always. But this is a cause of faction even among those who possess no noteworthy qualities, and certainly will be spirited and warlike men. To appreciate the point of Aristotle's remarks here, one must recall that Socrates' original philosophy in man to temper the ferocity essential to the nature of a good guard. Aristotle, however, describes the guards who Socrates always must be philosophical as well as spirited, merely as spirited and warlike. He deliberately omits the guard's philosophical quality, which he precisely the factor on which the city depends if it is to be saved from the guards' savagery. I was just reading this thing in Portland, I think, about this Antifa guy. You know, they wear like this goofy like BMX armor or whatever, and they wear masks and their stupid helmets and all this. Well, they just apparently assaulted like this 80-year-old lady who was like, she was like, hey, just get away. Like, stop trying to attack this courthouse. They fucking threw paint in her face. That sounds like a savagery of an ill-educated Socratean communistic guard to me. I'm John. This has been the Abercast.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. The price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I'm proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you could sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.